deeply troubling. What's your first reaction when President Mnangagwa signed it into law?
Yeah, well, I think for a start, it confirmed that he had lied to the people of Zimbabwe and to the world. He'd broken promises repeatedly made that he would not do precisely what he has just done by participating in this extension to his term. He has repeatedly made that commitment that he won't do that. But more fundamentally, the reality sunk in that our president and our parliament have collectively participated in a constitutional coup to overthrow the fundamental principles of our constitution, to undermine the gains that that we made as a nation in 2013 when this constitution came into effect, and to take us back to a very dark and dangerous system, an even worse system in many ways than was there prior to the constitutional reforms of 2013, a system where the president has unfettered power to appoint the judiciary, a system where a tiny handful of political elite will control who becomes president without any real say for the people of Zimbabwe, and that is just really scratching the surface. We can get into the substance of the amendments as if you would like, but the reaction is one of disappointment at the betrayal of the people, but also resolve that we cannot see this as the end of the road. It is not the end of the road, and in many ways, the struggle to defend the Constitution is only just beginning.
All right. So, for those that haven't been following the story, what is the effect of these amendments?
Yeah, sure. So the primary one is the extension of the term until at least 2030, but with an ambiguity that was inserted in the amendment, which opposition legislators tried to close, and the leader of government business refused to close, which potentially opens the door to the perpetual extension of the president and parliament's term, till kingdom come, giving parliament the power to perpetually renew its own mandate, effectively abolishing elections or making elections no longer mandatory. So that is one of the most dangerous provisions. That provision is in direct contradiction with a provision of our constitution which says that incumbents may not benefit to extensions to the length of their time in office. That has been completely subverted. That rule can only be changed if it's sent to a referendum. That has not happened. The referendum was meant to happen after Parliament passed it, but before the president signed. The president has signed the bill in violation of the Constitution. So that's one sort of bucket of things. Then the other is around the change to how the president is elected. So since 1987, Zimbabwe has directly elected the president, or the people of Zimbabwe have voted directly for the president. This shifts it to a parliamentary system of voting the president, which proponents of the bill say, is similar to what you have in South Africa. But that's not the case, because what the rest of the bill does is it ensures that those elections of the members of parliament will not be done democratically, as it, in that regard, is not similar to South Africa. A system of elections in which the president has absolute control over the appointment of key electoral bodies that were previously or electoral functions that were previously done by an independent commission will now be done by presidential appointees, giving the president control over how the elections are conducted, and resulting through various reforms, including the fact that the president will now be able to appoint senators directly to the Senate. Through these various reforms will mean that the ruling party will be able to retain power with about 30% of the vote at an election. That is not a democratic reform. That is authoritarian consolidation, that's entrenchment of an authoritarian regime. And then the last one that I will mention is the attack on the independence of the judiciary. With the 2013 constitution, some reforms were implemented which brought Zimbabwe closer to the South African position, where judges have to go through a public nomination process, a public interview process. The Judicial Service Commission compiled a list which then would be submitted to the president. All of that has been scrapped, and the president has been given unfettered power to appoint every judge in the country, essentially giving the executive control over the appointment of the judiciary. So, this is major democratic backsliding. Each and every single one of the reforms in that amendment is about consolidating power for the president and stripping the people of Zimbabwe of any mechanisms of accountability to hold our leaders accountable.
That last point you made about the judiciary, I guess that makes it a real uphill battle to try and get this whole thing undone through the courts.
So yes, it does, and look, there have been efforts to undermine the independence of the judiciary for decades in Zimbabwe. However, particularly on the question of the referendum, the constitution is so black and white on this issue. And not only that, the Constitutional Court of Zimbabwe has already ruled on this issue. The Constitutional Court has already said that Section 95, which deals with the president's term, is what the Constitution calls a term limit provision, which is subject to Section 328 of our Constitution, in particular subsection 7, which says that incumbents cannot benefit, meaning that for that rule to be changed, it must go to a referendum. And so although there has been this very sustained effort to undermine the independence of the judiciary, that issue is so black and white that I think that there are still reasonable prospects of success, that the judiciary will stand up on that issue. But I think the people of Zimbabwe need to understand, we all need to understand, that we cannot simply sit back and hope that the courts will save us from this constitutional coup. It requires the people of Zimbabwe to use the constitution to defend our constitution. Our constitution gives us rights such as the right to peaceful protest, the right to freedom of expression, which, although those rights have been under attack and are under attack, we need to use those rights now to defend our constitution, which is under attack, and the future of Zimbabwe, which is under attack.
Doug, I'm glad that you're a lawyer, because I need you to clear this up for me as well, because I thought it was pretty black and white and clear, but people are playing with words and saying that there's a difference between a term limit and a term extension.
Yes. Yes, so I mean the propagandist's line on this is quite hilarious when you just go and read the text of the Constitution. So their argument is, no, we're not changing the number of terms. He'll still only have 2 terms. We're just changing the length of term, because it was a 5-year term. Now it's a 7-year term. Therefore, we haven't changed the term limit, because the term limit is just a limit on the number of terms. And the reason I say it's hilarious is because the Constitution defines for us what a term limit provision is. It's defined in Section 328, subsection 1, and it defines a term limit in precisely the language that they are using to describe what they're doing. It says that a term limit provision means any provision of this Constitution which limits the length of time that a person may hold office. So it explicitly says that it's about dealing with the length of time that a person may hold office. And so, the argument, it just simply has, it carries no weight whatsoever the moment one actually just opens the Constitution and sees what it says. The Section 328, subsection 7, then says that incumbents cannot benefit from extensions to their length, to the length of time of their term, and then the bill itself, or what is now the Amendment Act itself, actually explicitly acknowledges that it's subject to Section 328, subsection 7, because it seeks to oust that clause. It seeks to say, notwithstanding the fact that incumbents cannot benefit, the incumbents shall benefit. But in
Doug, we're running out
constitutional
of
law, you
time.
cannot.
We're running out of
Sure.
time, and I
Go
wonder
ahead.
if you can answer this in 30 seconds. The last elections were found wanting by SADC, and some might say that's the original
Yes.
sin that set all of this up. And this means that in future, all you've got to do is rig the elections, and pretty much you can do whatever you want until the end of time.
Yeah, well, not even just that, Peter. The terrifying thing about these constitutional amendments is that it is not unreasonable to say that those flawed 2023 elections may be the last elections that Zimbabwe ever has, because of this ambiguity that was inserted in the constitution that I mentioned. Then whether we have elections perhaps we do have elections by the benevolence of Parliament in 2030 or perhaps 20